This is Lady Anne, owner of KPNL Radio and hostess of the Caravan Library of Lore, and I support Tessa. As an experiencer myself, I have filed my own reports with them, and the professionalism and heart they have shown my case goes above and beyond. If you have had an experience, I cannot recommend Tessa enough.
Hi, this is Ernie Hudson, Winston Zedmore from Ghostbusters. I want to let you know that Ryan Stacy, he's created the Experiencer Support Association, TESA. You can check them out at www.tesacan.org. Now, they investigate paranormal, UFO, and provide support to experiencers. But you can check them out at, like I said, www.tesacan.org and see for yourself if they're really Ghostbusters. I can tell you this, they are a non-profit organization. Good luck, have fun, and keep it blessed.
Good evening. You are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencer Support Association. Tessa is a UFO, paranormal, and paracryptid investigation association. We investigate everything belonging to the global phenomenon linked to highly strange and unexplained experiences. We also connect experiencers with other experiencers, creating a safe, positive environment to engage and discuss the phenomena without judgment, criticism, or retribution. From the land of the white rolling sands, on the southeasterly tip of Georgian Bay, to all of you listening around the world, as we simulcast live on KPNL Radio, we salute you. If you want to go back and listen to our previous episodes, go to youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to be instantly notified when we are live, not only for these episodes, but every single element Tessa has to offer. On our website, tessacan.org, we have something for everyone. We have support for experiencers, data for independent researchers, and places to advertise for professional partners. This live portion of the show will run for about 45 minutes. We'll have a commercial break and then spend some time answering some of your questions in the comments. The show will continue immediately after on Patreon for our private members, so head over and become a member for the unclassified tier and receive additional content from this episode and so much more for only $7 a month. To all our Patreon members, you are awesome, and thank you for helping us see the world. All proceeds go back into the mission and will continue to help us create educational content for you and your family. Become a member today by going to patreon.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Also, if you're joining us live on Facebook or Twitter, head over to our youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association if you want comments read out in the chat. We're only answering questions on YouTube, so head on over, hit that subscribe button, and start chatting. If you can't stay for the entire show, don't worry. Every Monday, we will upload the audio file to our podcast network for you to take us on the go. Okay, you ready? Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, March 18th, 2021, and I, Ryan Stacy, am your host this evening. Our guest for Season 3, Episode 8 is Shane Hurd. Shane Hurd has spent his government career in the fields of civil engineering, geographic information systems, information technologies, and is a graduate of Arizona State University's Certified Public Manager program. As a member of the space race generation, he has been a lifelong space and science nerd and a sci-fi geek. I didn't write this. It was, yeah, it was the Phoenix Lights incident in it. So it was the Phoenix Lights incident in his hometown of Phoenix, Arizona, that sparked his interest in UFOs since that time. He has studied the subject and ultimately in 2015 joined MUFON, the Mutual UFO Net, Field Investigator in 2017. He is now a STAR team member and was recently appointed the assistant director for Arizona MUFON. In June 2020, he published his first book entitled Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, A Beginner's Guide to Researching UFOs. He is a musician, a car guy, amateur astronomer, horse owner, and enjoys a good bourbon now and then. So, Shane, put on your tinfoil hat. How are you doing this evening?
Great, Ryan. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So first question, off the hop, favorite sci-fi movie, favorite TV show, and why?
Ooh, favorite sci-fi movie, Paul.
Okay.
And because it's funny and the content is right up my alley. And then TV show, I'll tell you, I'm enjoying one that's out right now called Alien Resident. And there was another one a couple of years ago that ended up getting canceled that I really enjoyed, and it was called People of Earth. And both are comedies set against the backdrop of UFOs, aliens, and that sort of thing. So really enjoyed those.
I haven't heard of the Earth one, but Resident Alien, I heard that one was really funny, and my mom wants to see that. So I was just kind of haven't had a chance to see that. So that's good. It's very good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm really interested in knowing for our audience, I'm sure our audience would appreciate this too. I'm just going to share the screen here. Since you're of Arizona and you study the Phoenix Lights, my question, I guess, would be, where were you when the Phoenix Lights event happened? And what did you know then? So what was the story then? And what do you know now after so many years in between?
Yeah, great questions. And it really was the case that set me kind of on a more serious path to studying UFOs. And I do remember exactly where I was that night. Now, I saw nothing. So that's not what propelled me into this. But we were actually going to view the Hale-Bopp comet, I believe it was, with some friends who lived on the outskirts of town where it's really good and dark. And they had a telescope and had us for dinner. And, we were going to just enjoy the evening stargazing. And that's what we did. But by the time I got home, 10 o'clock or whatever it was, the local news was chatting up this incident, this display of lights and stuff that was seen. And, it caught my attention, honestly, more for the fact that, because I wasn't really in tune with UFOs. I mean, I was aware of them and my mind was open towards them. So it wasn't, a big deal for me, but it was like, this is happening in my own backyard, my own hometown. That's fascinating. And so, starting the next day, coverage started to get more intense, and all the local stations. And then, within a week or two, it was, went national, and it was, that USA article, USA Today newspaper article, from which I think the photo or the illustration on the right is from, came out, and the thing just blew up. And so everybody was talking about it. And even though I did not work in government yet at that time, one of the local city of Phoenix council persons took an interest in the case, and her name was Frances Emma Barwood, and she still lives here in Phoenix. But she became interested in the case because she got like 800 phone calls about the sighting from people who had seen it. And she sort of, what now she might even admit naively, brought this before council to say, hey, are we going to look into this? And she got, poo-pooed in a hurry. And she was kind of shocked by that and didn't expect that apprehension and kind of ridicule. Well, as the coverage goes on for weeks and months, and there's pressure on state government to do something about it. The governor at the time was very controversial anyway. His name was Fife Symington, and he was having challenges, political challenges leading the state, and he was pretty sensitive to that. And his initial reaction on this case was to do what everyone has done since 1947, everyone in terms of government anyway, is to poo-poo it, to ridicule it, to, make fun of it, try and paint it in a light of nonsense and all sorts of stuff. And he in fact did that, and he even paraded out one of his aides in an alien suit at a news conference and said, "We've caught the culprit," kind of a thing. So it really made a mockery of it, but it really backfired on him because people were taking it quite seriously. And over time, it ended up, I think it was when James Fox made the movie I Know What I Saw, he was interviewing Fife Symington, and Fife had admitted to him, unbeknownst to anyone ever, that he actually saw one of the crafts himself. And that just really shocked James, and that just started a whole new narrative. And I think that was around 2007 or so. But so my understanding at the time was that there was either a craft or multiple crafts that had transversed the state of Arizona, kind of from the northwest to the southeast, and went right over the city of Phoenix, which, it's about, I think the metro area is pushing 5 million people. And so a lot of people saw this thing. A lot of reports were made to, police, to newspapers, to MUFON, to New Fork, those organizations. And it really was a very big deal. And there's a couple videos that were made, one from a retired airline pilot, and that's the one that it's not a very good video, frankly. It was just consumer grade VHS. And that's the only known one of the craft per se. And then the image on the screen right now for your viewers to the left there represents what occurred later in the evening. And there really were two events. There was a parade of huge triangular craft or delta-shaped craft or boomerang craft, reported differently, going across the state. But that image of those lights appeared over Metro Phoenix, kind of the southwest edge of it. And it was very dramatic. And as you can see, that's very dramatic footage. And a lot of people, were trying to mix those two events together. I mean, there's some logic for that, happened on the same night. But later, things in the course of investigations and so forth, there's being dropped from I think it was a Maryland Air National Guard group who was training on the Barry Goldwater training range, which is where those lights were. They were over that. I think an interesting fact, that mountain range that they were over is called the Estrella Mountains, and Estrella is the Native American term for star mountains, star or star people mountains. And so I think that's just kind of an interesting twist on it. But at any rate, so over the period of time, the case has gone unsolved. We have a local doctor here, Lynn Kitai, and she's a real sweetheart, and she's really done a great job of keeping the story alive. And as she has done that on an annual basis, there's she rents a whole movie theater and puts on a presentation, invites speakers, and she had a film. She made a really good film on it, and all those things. So, it's still, in the consciousness of people, at least here in Arizona, on a pretty regular basis. And so it has really been coined as one of the largest mass sightings in modern history. And what I can say, so that was then. What's changed now a little bit, which is pretty interesting, is more witnesses are coming out. And I had just spoken to a gentleman not long ago from Prescott, Arizona, which was in the flight path, and he too was a pilot, and he did not want to damage his career, which is why he didn't say anything until now he's retired, kind of a thing. But what's interesting is our MUFON chapter, Arizona MUFON, we meet in the Arizona Historical Society Museum, and within that museum is an exhibit of the Phoenix Lights. And this was before I joined MUFON, but MUFON had a hand in helping them create this exhibit. And to this day, it's their most popular exhibit. And some of the really fascinating things to me, as you read my bio, I'm a Geographic Information Systems guy, and that's basically mapping. And one of the neat features they did in that historical museum display was they had a graph where they plotted like a pinpoint for every phone call. So at the date, the time, and the location, they gathered all the phone calls that they could and get this data, and they plotted it. And it made a perfect, just a perfect flight path, kind of diagonally like this across the state. Okay. Just this point in time, this call was made. So you could actually track the flight path of whatever it was, or they were.
Were they able to determine the speed?
I thought that was really. Yeah, they could determine the speed. I mean, this thing really, it appears there were multiple objects, and this occurred from about 6 p.m.-ish to 10, 11 o'clock at night. This body of sightings and in that trajectory or that flight path, and some people described them as I said, like a mile wide, which is unfathomable, really. Some triangular, some boomerang, some were extremely low. I've seen accounts and reports where one person said he could probably have thrown a rock and hit the bottom of it. It was that close to him, and there were really great.
Sorry, I was just going to say, were they in unison at all? Did they move at all, like in different thing, or did they all move together?
Yeah, I think there were multiple craft sighted at multiple locations, even though they were in that general corridor. So, for example, the one Fife Symington saw, the one he saw was the same one as one of the prominent witnesses. His name was Tim Ley, Ley. They had seen it, and it's a part of Phoenix called, oh gosh, what is that area? I can't remember. But, and Symington actually was in his house, heard about all this, and he drove up to this park. It was in Sunny Slope. Sorry, that was it. In Sunny Slope. Went to this park, and that's where he saw the craft himself. And he said, it was otherworldly is the term he used. And Tim Ley also had witnessed that same one, and they both described it similarly, even though they didn't know each other. And, but then there were people in Chandler, which would have been farther south and east, who described, this very large thing going over. And I mean, there were like, at that time, there were a lot of like softball or little league stuff going on. It's dark, it's night, it's all lit up. These games just stopped. People just stopped, looked up and just gawked at this thing as it flew over them. Another case was down right over Sky Harbor International Airport, which is like one of the top 10 busiest airports in the world. And they apparently 2 fighter jets were scrambled out of Luke Air Force Base, which is on the west side of Phoenix. And that's where they train F-16 pilots for, all over the world. And they scrambled 2 jets, and they overflew this thing, encountered it, saw it. The pilot saw it with their eyes. They didn't do anything because it was so huge, and apparently one of the pilots was so disturbed he needed help getting out of his plane, and he was just so freaked out about it. So so it really indicates that there were multiple sightings of multiple craft over this time period, but it was really kind of down that corridor from northwest to southeast, and apparently they went off into Mexico as well. And I'm not familiar with any reports from Mexico, but I know that as far south as like Sierra Vista, and these are some border towns in Arizona, that they also had some reports. So it was really a fascinating thing. And it just blows my mind that you could have such a mass sighting and yet you can't identify it. It's a frustrating thing.
Do you think I was just going to say, like, with all the knowledge that you have and the experience as an investigator as well, and an FI under MUFON, and even your own academic experience, are you more on the side of it being military versus ET, or ET versus military? Like, who's the pilot? Who do you think is piloting this?
Yeah, good question. And I struggle with that. I even struggled with that for sure before I became involved as a MUFON investigator. And as an investigator now, I still, it's not clear to me. I definitely understand that our technology produced by our government right now is probably what we would consider decades ahead of its time, right? So we saw the F-117A that was basically, a late 70s design, and we didn't see it until operational until 1990. I think Richard Dolan makes the point that the NSA had computers with a 650 bus speed on them, and that didn't hit the consumer market until well after 2005 or something like that. So there's absolute proof.
So on that note, with the technology we have today, look at the closest thing that I would see today would be Starlink. Even those are satellites, but the sequence of lights moving. So do you think we would possess, not to compare that to that, but do you think that we have the technology to reproduce that today?
I don't think so.
No.
And I've not seen any evidence to think that's the case. I mean, the leap in technology that would be required by that is, and I'm not a scientist, and I've been involved with civil engineering, but not aerodynamics and all the things that all the sciences, material science, all of that somebody maybe with that kind of knowledge would understand it better. But I find that, to me, that's just too far. It's too far to go. I mean, I know even like with the Tic Tac, some people are saying maybe it's, a secret government project, but, a 40-foot, Tic Tac is still a huge and far cry from a craft that's a mile wide. I mean, structurally, we have no capability to do that whatsoever, and nothing close to my knowledge. Now, could there be? I don't know. I just think, you have to be careful with both. I mean, it's more actually, if you're going to play odds, the odds are greater that it is some secret human technology, from the perspective that we know secret human technology exists, right? Aliens, we don't have that proof yet. We don't have that proof. So you always have to be balanced in that equation, I think. I am not sold that it's our technology, but without proof to say that there are others out there yet. It's only my opinion, and I'm a big fan of Stanton Friedman, and I always use this analogy of the black box inbox, the white inbox, and the gray box, right? Meaning, black, it's absolutely no, or white, it's absolutely yes, and gray, I don't know, maybe it's in the middle. And that whole concept for me is still in my gray box.
There's a lot in that gray box with this phenomenon.
Most of it.
I think it's all in that gray box. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk about MUFON. You've been with MUFON for a while. Pros and
Yeah.
cons.
Yeah.
And
Well,
how, like, are they still around? Like, how's it been since the pandemic? Because visually,
yeah.
it doesn't seem like their marketing game is around anymore. So I'm curious to know how you guys are doing.
Yeah. So let me just tell you first how I got involved with MUFON, and you'll
Okay.
kind of understand my thinking. Is that when I began to research UFOs, I was just reading everything I could read, and the first book I read was The Day After Roswell by Bill Burns and Philip J. Corso. And when I read that, I was pretty skeptical, and I was kind of disappointed because I thought I just my mind just changed a little bit about it, but at that moment in time, I thought, this is just crap, and I almost gave up. But at that moment in time, Leslie Kane came out with her book, UFOs, Pilots, Generals, Public Officials Go on the Record. And she is an investigative reporter, and she wrote the book as an investigative reporter, and I thought it was outstanding. And it really changed my mind into, okay, look, there is something to this phenomena. But the lesson I learned quickly is you have wheat and you have chaff when it comes to UFO information. The chaff is all the clutter and baloney and nonsense that we all see, and you have to wade through to get to the wheat like chaff, or the wheat, the good information. And there is good information. And so I continued my quest. And as I spent a few years, I'm not saying I know everything, but I got to a point where, like, okay, I've read a couple hundred books, I've seen all these videos and all this. Now what do? I don't want to. So I have this knowledge. I want to apply it. I want to do something. I want to play. I want to participate. I want to be involved. I don't want to just read about other people's experiences. I want to have my own. Now, I've never seen what I would consider verifiably a UFO. But that's not what drove me. And many people who are in this field are driven by the fact that they've had an experience. But me, it was just purely intellectual curiosity that took me there. So when it came to, okay, what's the next step for me? What am I going to do? How can I engage? Well, I kind of looked around, and at that time, there was really one organization that stood out to me, being MUFON. And I knew I'd already spent, 15 years in government. I've worked in corporate and other things. And I know that I can function in an organization, a big organization, and I can be successful there. And, I have the tools to do that, and so MUFON for me was, well, look, this is a focused effort to do something, one piece of ufology, because it was immediately apparent to me that ufology it's like this huge, like a buffet, right? And you have everything from, abductions to crop circles to, just every aspect of it. And I thought to myself, well, I can't be good at 15 different things. Let me pick one or two things that are kind of up my alley, and let me try that. And so that's how I got to MUFON. And when I started with MUFON, I just was kind of in the shadows, in the corner, just watching, reading, gathering information. It's joined Facebook and got connected with people, and started to kind of round out my knowledge and my experience. And my experience with MUFON has been very good. The Phoenix chapter, Arizona chapter is a very good chapter. It's very well run by, at the time, Jim Mann was the director, and Stacy Wright, the assistant director. Stacy is now the director, and I'm the assistant director. But my point is that they really run their organization well. And MUFON is almost like a franchise, right? You have corporate, you have, the international, the main body of MUFON, and then you have chapters, and those chapters are either a single state or a group of states or whatever. And this occurs worldwide. And so there's a bit of autonomy in various chapters, even though you stick to the basic outline that MUFON corporate, I'll call it, outlines for you. So there's structure, but there is, latitude, especially for, I always say about UFOs is A, it's about people, and B, it's local. And it really is. The conditions and circumstances you find in Arizona may be quite different than in California or Canada or New York or Chile or whatever. And so you need that flexibility, to take into account geographic areas, cultural, influences, and all these little aspects to it. So again, that appealed to me, that was logical to me. And my experience has been really, really good as far as MUFON. And also meeting a lot of great people. I've met a lot of great people that really take it serious and stuff. So my experience has been good. However, I know, that's not true for everyone. And, I just, again, being a part of an organization, for my 40 years of work life, I know you're going to have some good with the bad and that kind of thing.
And that's the problem too, is because MUFON has grown exponentially to manage all those people. Me being in the position as a national trainer for a while, that was difficult to get everybody on the same page, especially being Canadian, because I'm I've never seen so much hate in some of these states that we don't have here in Canada. Like, just relax, it's okay. I'm sorry, but so. Yeah. But everyone tried, and that's the thing. As you said, you explained it well. Corporate, there's that corporate side, and as long as it was running and it was maintaining, and everyone was doing it, they dealt with whatever they need to. They took a lot of hits. They're still taking hits.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, even with the situation that happened with me, in my experience, that I blame that on the people that were involved and society at the time, not the industry. It's good, and I want to say thank you for your service and your apology, because we all have to work together. And my follow-up question, I guess, would be, you've done a little bit of research. What do you think of Tessa, and how do you think we could complement the MUFON in either now or in the future?
Yeah, I think it's really great to. Okay, MUFON's mission is pretty narrow scoped. It really is. And that's basically to collect reports, analyze those reports. If you can come up with a disposition of what was seen, you do it. And then those reports remain in this vast database. And then folks who want to research data can get to that information and perform research. And when it's almost kind of like when you're a fisherman, right? You throw your bait out there or throw bread on the waters, and what comes up, and then you handle that, right? So with MUFON, we just, a case can come in that is as, silly as it gets, or it can be extremely compelling. And there's a whole lot of stuff in between, like lights in the sky, right? We don't filter what comes in. We take what comes in, and then we process that, and then that's really it. Now they've expanded a bit to include an experiencer research team led by Kathleen Martin, and that is interesting to me. Honestly, when I first started, I was purely a nuts and bolts guy, which for your audience, may I'll just explain. That's like, hey, that's a metal craft coming from another planet here. That's kind of the nuts and bolts concept of UFOs. Now, obviously, as I became more educated and experienced, realized that doesn't explain everything. There has to be more to it than that, or it's different than that, or it's only a part of it, you know. So the longer you're dealing with UFOs, and the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And that's kind of the experience that I'm having. But so MUFON, if somebody has had an experience, is an experiencer, and they want to report that, we take that report, but then we refer them to the experiencer research team, who basically is a collection of individuals that help those people cope with their circumstance. They're not there to say, yeah, it happened or it didn't happen. They're there to say, hey, you know, can we help you process this? Do you want to be part of a group, or do you know, want to see a psychologist or a hypnotist or whatever? They act more as sort of a guide to the resources to provide that person with help. And the more time I've spent involved with this and the investigation of the nuts and bolts, I've come to a greater appreciation of the impact it has on people, the human element, and the experiences these people are having and the impact on them. I mean, it just kind of it breaks my heart in a lot of cases. And the next thing in the world for an intelligent human being is to not be believed. You know, it's a questioning of your intelligence and your intellect, and that's hard for we ego-driven human beings to accept, and it's highly offensive. And so I feel so bad for people. Not only are they bearing the burden of what clearly was a traumatic event, regardless of what the source of it was for them, then they have to put up with the ridicule and the insults of being doubted. So I'm finding myself more compassionate about that.
That's good that you're on that side too. And I was a member of the Experiencer research team as well, as part of Canada. And so I was on STAR team. I was on all those other things. And I don't know if it's just a Canadian experience or the way that our chapter was run, but in my experience, I've never actually seen the delivery side from using those resources. When I referred people over to Kathleen Martin, you know, nice person. I've met her. She's a beautiful person. No issues. It resulted in, when I got feedback from my people, or the people that I helped, the feedback was that I just did an extensive survey and then that was it. So again, with the ERT, it's the same. It's science. It's good. It's there. They're asking good questions, but there was never any delivery on, at least from my experience, on the return service. So that's kind of where the driven with Tessa has came off of, is creating the element. I don't want to eat too much of the time, but the Cole's notes is basically, after investing all my time in a MUFON, and realizing all these things they claim that they do, but they don't have time for because they're too big, not because they didn't care. It's just they just got big too fast. Created a solution. So the idea of Tessa was actually offered to Jan when I was national, and I offered to assist with that program, so to offset the workload. Didn't take the offer. Things happen, all this other stuff. So Tessa is basically the same idea. It's the same thing. It was something that I had given. But it's interesting. I don't want to get into it too, but your ER team, like, messages got passed around and certain ideas were copied. But to bury the hatchet and all these other things, I'm glad that they caught on to the idea, and I'm glad that they're doing better now, because I can tell you that they didn't do anything before on that side. So I'm really happy to hear that. I'm really happy to see the change and that. So for our perspective with Tessa is also available to you, to MUFON, to anyone as on the investigative side, to do a double check on the information that comes in. Because as the director of training for a while, and also the national chief investigator for MUFON Canada, I have all this, you know, I just basically carried over that role into Tessa. but instead of on
Nice.
MUFON for the entire world. I didn't want to, try to adapt that philosophy for everyone, so that way you're not a part of a label and all those other things. So one
Right.
more question before we get into break, and then we can hop into questions. Is where does paranormal fit in MUFON?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have had cases.
It's a loaded question. I'll just warn you.
Yeah, I already know. On a organizational level, I honestly have not got any direction or indication one way or another about paranormal. However, when it arises within a case that I'm researching, and it has,
Mm-hmm.
I make mention of it. I include that in my report. Now,
so what is paranormal? What is paranormal to you?
I would say things like shadow people, objects moving, people getting scratched, that kind of stuff.
Could any of those be ET?
Potentially. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't have a strong opinion yet of, are we talking multiple things happening? Like, aliens over here is one thing, and, paranormal is, dead people here, or is it religious and they're demons, or, there's a lot of theories, right? And again, they're theories,
Are UFOs paranormal?
Possibly. I mean, remember when I had said earlier, nuts and bolts doesn't explain it all? No, I absolutely think there's more to it than that. Now, but I can't say it's paranormal because I really can't define paranormal either. They're kind of both undefinable.
Well, the word
but they have different characteristics.
This means not normal.
Broad. Yeah.
It means anything that is not normal. So on a technicality, again, I said this was a loaded question. Don't worry about it. It's the term paranormal actually will include UFOs. It has to, because we don't have an answer for the unidentified flying objects, and objects that are flying in the way that they're being described by definition is paranormal. So the other idea of Tessa as well is to do ufology the same way, but also try to educate people that the paranormal spectrum, the other side, because it's always hard to do this thing, but ufology is so small in this. How do I do it backwards? In this rainbow of things that's going on, but everything has to be connected, unless the UFOs are government. And that means just people piling it, and then that just goes into a box, and then that just kind of typecasts everything from there.
Well, I like the word you use. Word that you use, spectrum.
Spectrum.
That paranormal and UFOs are part of the same spectrum. I would, I would say that's a fairly good way to explain it. We don't know exactly sources, but it exhibits similar behaviors or unexplained behaviors, and it could be interdimensional, it could be other things. I mean, we don't even know what that really means either. So it's a fascinating thing.
John Keel, who wrote the book on the Mothman prophecies, a ufologist as well, he coined the term and that basically is the nuts and bolts of that. So okay, we gotta head to commercial break. I'm gonna read my little blurb here, and then when we get back, if you guys in the comments are on YouTube, we're answering questions on YouTube if you guys have any. So make sure you ask them, and we'll head into that momentarily. Just let me get everything all queued up here. So we are listening to. We will pause right here, but we will continue after a message from our professional partners. Also, if you're listening to this live on KPNL Radio or a future podcast, head over to youtube.com/Experiencer Support Association to see the video that goes with this audio, which includes the picture of the Phoenix Lights that I was showing earlier. Remember, you're listening to the Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencer Support Association, and we'll be right back.
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. And just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life. That's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man. Get back here. Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that we're alone in the universe.
My mission is to assist and help those experiencing this phenomenon in such a way that they're able to continue and live with it, and also in a way that it can be measured, quantified, and reinforced within today's society, so that way it can be accepted and no longer viewed in a negative way. One thing that I do value in people is the ability to sense and feel when something is right and when something is wrong. That is a natural ability that we all share. Now, when we combine that with the paranormal and ufological abductions or visits, I have this sensation that these abilities are connected. Not everyone can sense, not everyone can feel. However, those who can are typically connected with something that we cannot explain. And part of my research is not just to investigate the experience, but it's also to understand and study the experiencer to find out what they have in common with other experiencers, to try to figure out what the actual makeup is in order to be on that spectrum. There's a lot of it happening all over the world, and I do not know of any other study that is focusing on the individuals as people, only the phenomenon.
Welcome back. You are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hats. If you're enjoying this episode so far, head over to patreon.com/the Experiencer Support Association and join the unclassified tier for only a few bucks a month. Your membership will get you at least an extra half hour of this conversation, as well as a bunch of other perks for becoming a Tessa Insider. Also, if you have ever experienced an unexplained event involving paranormal, extraterrestrials, dogman, or any other paracryptid, and UFOs, head over to tessacan.org/reporting system, all one word. And also remember, we have an app, so you can download that on the Google Play and the Apple Store. The more reports we get, the more we will understand the phenomenon and how it affects our people. But the others who have already reported be that example that proves that we are together making a difference. If it wasn't for these reports, we would not be able to do what we do, and for that, we thank you. I'm still here with our guest, Shane Hurd, the Arizona Assistant Director of MUFON. Said that backwards, but it's the same thing. And we're going to dive into some comments. And I just want to give him a shout out. You know, like I asked him some pretty tough questions, and I know MUFON has always been battling this like, don't touch that word paranormal. You know, and my audience knows that I'm an activist, and I had to ask you that. We got through it. I got another hard question to ask at the end, but we're going to save that for Patreon audience, so you don't have to worry about it. But you're doing good.
Yeah. No worries.
So
I can take it.
No, it's all good, and I appreciate. That's the thing too. Is MUFON is a philosophy. Tessa is also a philosophy. You know, so the fact that you're taking that concept and that idea and that you're doing work as an individual, you don't need that label. MUFON is just a label. Tessa is a label. You are Shane. You are Shane Hurd. I'm Ryan Stacy. Like, the work that we do is what gets recognized, and that's another thing too, is that we want to bring out is that the work that you have done on behalf of that organization was not because of the organization. It's because of you.
Right.
You know, we and the whole idea of Tessa as an association is to have a group of individuals that are doing the same thing for the same mission, and it doesn't matter what the label is. It's just a name. Yeah. So, we did have some good questions in there. Let me shout out to everybody. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Chantel. Hello, Claudia. KPNL Radio. Hello, Scarborough Sasquatch Station. And then Eve Sanderson. Oh, I said your name out of turn. I'm not supposed to say it because you're a Facebook person. Head over to YouTube. I messed up. Hello, Brown Beard. John Cadeau. Hey, man, I have not seen or heard from you since, like, I don't know, high school. How you doing, man? So let me just, you guys are having a chat. Emma's mom, hello. You guys are just chit-chatting, eh? Where's the questions, guys? I swear I saw some questions. Where is it? Ah, here it is, from John Cadeau. What was the first event you looked into that really caught your attention?
Yeah, I'd have to say it was the Phoenix Lights. But let me say, again, there are what I would call classic cases throughout history that are so valuable to study and learn from, because what makes them classic cases is they have some strength of evidence. So, for example, one might be, you know, the witness testimony was, you know, super credible, or, you know, multiple people saw this thing. So from that standpoint, it's a great case. Or some cases have great physical evidence. It might be chemical or radiological or other evidence, or in other cases have great video or photographic evidence. So, you know, yes, it was that case that really snagged me and got my attention, and mainly because it was my hometown, but it doesn't hurt that it's the largest mass sighting in modern history either. And I really believe that that's an extraordinary case, but there are more extraordinary cases than any of those classics. In fact, I talk about several of those in my book, because I just think it's so important for us to, you know that history.
I have a follow-up question to that. So let's take that same question and let's say specifically to MUFONs. Within your career within MUFON, the cases that you've had, what would be your most significant case that you've personally worked on?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, a lot of the cases are your typical lights in the sky, and you really can't identify them. And those are frustrating because it's just lack of actionable evidence. It doesn't mean that it wasn't extraordinary in some way, but you can't do anything with it. But one case that sticks in my mind, and it's also been published in a couple of books, since it happened. And it was actually a husband and wife who were MUFON investigators. And they went hiking the Grand Canyon. And if you know anything about that, it's about a mile deep, and where you go down and you hike it and you get down in there, and there's this place called Phantom Ranch, and there's like a lodge, and you either camp or stay in some, I don't know, I guess they're barrack-like things. But at any rate, you get down in there, and I mean, it's got to be the darkest place on earth. It's just, there's no light pollution for hundreds of miles, and it's just a beautiful experience, and very, very calm down in there. And at any rate, they had went on a vacation, and they went down there and they hiked down in there, and they were about 9 p.m. They were walking on a trail to go back to the lodge from they were going to go to the lodge to get something to eat or drink or something, and then they were going to head back to their cabin or campsite. And as they were doing so, they saw this ball of light, a spherical lighted object, come from very high, like outer space high, came down, got bigger and bigger, came down, and then it went below the walls of the canyon. Okay, so this to me is significant. A light in the sky, again, hey, satellite, airplane, drone, whatever. But this thing went from that high altitude down to within the canyon walls. And they were, flabbergasted by this thing. And they were maybe 1,000 feet away or something, maybe not even that much, 500. And it made no noise, and the light from it cast shadow on the walls of the canyon and on the ground. And this thing, that it came down, and it went, and it kind of, went around like maybe 20 feet off the ground type level, according to their perception. And then it went back up, and it went, above the canyon walls again, and then it shot off into space. So, part of my investigation, I contacted, the park rangers there, to determine, like, could this have been a drone? I didn't think it was a drone based on their description, but, drones are not allowed in there. They're prohibited. If you were to bring one in, you'd get in big trouble. No production company had permission to film something down there. I checked all of that. There was really no explanation for what that could have been. If it were a helicopter, it had been so loud, thundering echoing through those canyon walls. I mean, there are just a lot of things about it. Credibility of the witness, the event itself, the behavior of the object. It was just very compelling. And so that case is one of my more satisfying cases. I closed it as an unknown. That made, a bit of an impression on me. So yeah, it's a MUFON case. That's pretty good. I did have another one that was super strange.
Okay.
And this was more of like an abduction type case, it's so complex. I probably shouldn't have brought it up, but it involved things like voodoo, healing arts, the person got a restraining order against another person. This person went to the police, went to the court. The judge wrote a nice letter about it, acknowledging, it involved rape. It involved reptilians. I mean, this thing was crazy town from A to B. And, in the end, what can you do with it other than, acknowledge the person and thank them. And, we researched what we could research, and it had some fascinating tangents. Like, some of the people involved were part of this cult in California in the 80s. And my mind was just literally blown by the amount of information and all of these, really